One thing I like to tell people is that I think there's a difference between an emotion and a feeling. An emotion is just the biochemical response that you're experiencing. A feeling is your interpretation of that. It's the meaning that you attach to it. And, for the longest time, I would tell people I've always had anxiety or I'm an anxious person. And what I stopped doing, when I stopped doing that and started labeling it as activation, I started saying, this is me getting activated. I'm getting prepared for something. Because I converted the meaning out of a negative one to a positive one, it really changed the experience, right? And so one thing, anytime somebody's regularly experiencing a feeling that they say that they don't want, is I like to ask them, what's the emotion and then what's the feeling? How can we change the experience or the meaning around this, thus ultimately make you feel more positive about it? If that doesn't work, there's like 5 questions that I like to ask people. So the first one is, what is it that you're not doing and you know that you should be? So what are you putting off? What are you procrastinating on? Anxiety can oftentimes be like a check engine light in a car. It's sending you a signal to pay attention to something, right? And maybe that something is the answer to that question, which is, what is it that you're not doing that you know that you should be? The second question is very much in the same vein, but it is, what is it that you're doing and you know that you shouldn't be? So what's the activity that you're engaging in that you shouldn't be, right? And for some people, that's watching too much news. For others, it's drinking too much booze. But we can typically find something with that question. The third one is, what are you preaching but you aren't practicing? So we get this feeling of hypocrisy when we're constantly asking people to do things that we ourselves aren't doing or aren't willing to do, right? And so what is it that you are preaching that you aren't practicing? The fourth one is, what is the molehill you're making into a mountain? What is the minor thing that you're making a major? And, an easy way to think about this is, will you even care about this circumstance 30, 60, 90 days down the road? If you won't care about it then why do you have to care so much about it now? Oftentimes, people misidentify the level of threat that is acting upon them. They look at everything as if it's this threat level midnight, right? Instead of having the appropriate response to the threat that is in front of them. That's for a completely different conversation, though. The last one is the one that I think most people, if they understood this, it would make their life exceptionally better, which is, what is the uncontrollable that you are seeking to control? We don't know the boundary of control that we ultimately have. I tell people, you have about a yoga mat worth of control in this world. What you can fit into a yoga mat, which is yourself, your hands, your arms, that's about what you control. And if you think about like little kids when they play basketball, for example, and maybe the ball goes out of bounds, the game stops, right? But sometimes there's this one kid that doesn't realize that the ball went out of bounds, or maybe they don't understand that when the ball goes out of bounds that the game stops. And that little kid stands there and he's still guarding the other kids, and it's really funny to watch. But that's how a lot of people are, is the second something leaves the boundary of your control, then that's when you should let it go, right? Understand, have dead clarity on what you control and pay no mind to what you don't. And when you get that, man, your life can become so much more exceptional. And the question I like to ask people around this is, do you notice the moment a circumstance leaves the boundary of your control? Because if you can notice that moment, then you can notice the moment that you will no longer pay it any mind. And it's about a yoga mat worth of control is what you ultimately have in this world. Try those questions out. They work, man. They work.